Hello, attendees, fellow speakers, and enthusiasts of production. Welcome to Creative Production Day 2023. I'm honored to be your host today for the exciting virtual conference where we'll explore innovation, collaboration, and the world of creative production. Just to start with a little bit about myself, my name is Paul Nicholson. I am a former Senior Vice President of Production and Technology at Showtime Networks, where I had been until very recently for about 20 years. At Showtime, I ran all aspects of creative production and creative technology for the in-house agency. My teams at Showtime handled everything from campaign and project management to all video post-production, retouching, physical production, video shoots, photo shoots, all of the production of the print and digital creative assets. And also at Showtime, I was responsible for the creative operations and marketing technology. Like for so many of you, managing this large, high-volume in-house creative production operation had been really stressful, but it's also super exciting, right? I think you'd agree. I get to work with a lot of really great people and on some really, really fun projects, and every single day at Showtime is unique. And so having recently parted ways with Showtime, I'm currently doing some consulting and enjoying the search for what's next for me. But for now, today, I'm thrilled to be here with you as the chair of this event, and I want to express my sincere thanks for you all being here today. In the ever-evolving landscape of marketing and advertising, creative is the lifeblood of our industry. It's the spark that ignites connections, the bridge that links brands to their audiences, and driving force that propels business forward. Today, we're not only exploring the intricacies of creative production, but we're also embarking on a journey to understand the state of our industry and its dynamic relationship with creativity. Over the years, we've witnessed a remarkable transformation in how creativity is conceived, executed, and delivered to consumers. The rise of digital media, the proliferation of social platforms, and the advent of new technologies have revolutionized the way we all approach creative production. It's blurred the lines between traditional and digital mediums, challenged us to think beyond boundaries, and redefine the very essence of what it means to create compelling content. As we dive in today, we'll hear from experts who have successfully navigated these changes and harnessed the power of creativity to not only engage their audiences, but also to drive tangible results for their brands. We'll explore the latest trends, innovative techniques, and best practices that are shaping the creative production landscape today. And throughout our day today, we'll touch upon these critical aspects of creative production, examining the strategies and philosophies that have driven success in our industry. We'll learn from the experiences of our speakers and engage in insightful discussion that I hope will leave us all inspired, informed, and equipped new tools to harness the creative potential within our own organization. Okay, so a little housekeeping note that I want to mention. I want to remind you all that I will be out in Los Angeles with the entire Henry Stewart crew on November 17th for the next big in-person event. We'll have a full day of sessions out there on creative production, creative operations, design operations, and photo studio operations, all in one jam-packed day with amazing speakers. So if you're out in LA or you can make the trip, you don't want to miss this day. I hope to see you all out there. Today, we have a remarkable lineup of speakers and topics that promise to ignite our imaginations and challenge our perceptions and offer fresh insights into the dynamic landscape of what we all do every day called creative production. So from discussions on inclusion in advertising to the profound impact of AI on our industry, we have a diverse array of themes that reflect the ever-evolving nature of our field. So here's the agenda for the day. Here's what we can expect. First, our journey will begin with an exploration of equality, inclusion, and diversity in advertising, where we'll ask the question, are we really making progress? This crucial discussion will set the stage for the day, underscoring the importance of inclusivity in our creative endeavors. Next, after that, we'll delve into the intriguing world of AI and creative production. This is the buzzword of the moment. With the good, the bad, and the unknown, where our speaker will uncover the potential and the pitfalls of this technology that's reshaping our industry. Then we'll navigate the uncharted waters of the metaverse and navigating uncertainty in the metaverse platforms. The metaverse is emerging as a game changer for all of us, and we'll learn how it's unlocking new creative horizons. And then finally, we'll explore the merits of fostering creativity within our production processes by building robust in-house teams. This panel discussion promises to offer valuable insights insights for those looking to innovate from inside their organization. Now, throughout the day, I encourage you all to actively engage in the discussions, ask questions, use the Q&A feature. We're not just here to listen, we're here to collaborate, learn, and inspire each other. So without further ado, let's kick off the first section of Creative Production Day 2023. First up, we have Rondell Wescott, the creative and production lead from Google Cloud. He's going to share his personal experiences as a Black man who has worked in the advertising industry for 20 years. He'll also explain why, in his opinion, we need to make a bigger push to help our industry become even more diverse. So I'm happy now to introduce Rondell Wescott.
Thank you, Paul, and good day to everybody here who is attending Creative Production Day 2023. When I say that I'm blessed and honored to be here, that is truly an understatement. So a sincere thank you to the team from Henry Stewart Events for inviting me to be here with you all today. Now, who am I? Once again, my name is Rondell Wescott. And I love to say that I was born in Philly, but made in New York City. I've been working as a creative producer for over 20 years now. I've spent the majority of my career working my way up through the ranks at various ad agencies, including 2 stints at Great New York, Havas, Leo Burnett, and Translation, which has all led me to my current role where I'm in-house at Google as the creative production lead for Google Cloud. Now, when I was presented with the opportunity to speak here today, I was able to choose my own topic. After much consideration, I just decided to talk about diversity, and not because I'm an expert on the subject, but because I'm part of an industry that has not always looked like the world where I'm from or the world that I live in. And while I know diversity is broad and it includes gender, ethnicity, sexuality, and a whole lot more, I've chosen to focus my discussion today around the lack of racial diversity given my own personal experiences as a Black man in this business. I want to start by sharing a poem by Langston Hughes, a well-known Black American poet and one of my favorites. It's called Mother to Son. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up and places with no carpet on the floor. Bare, but all the time I's been a climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on the steps 'cause you finds it kinda hard. Don't you fall now, for I still going, honey. I still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. And to echo the poem, life for me in advertising and marketing ain't been no crystal stair. I learned early on that my experiences in this business would be different from that of my peers. Since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a producer. I would watch the behind the scenes or the making ofs for films and TV shows, and it was always just so fascinating to me. So I go to college, study TV production, and after a 3-month internship at Great New York, they hired me as an assistant producer in the department at the age of 21 years old. Now, I never really sought to work in advertising per se. I was on the hunt for a job, and they were the first ones to hire me. See, as I mentioned, I was born and raised in Philadelphia. So for me, living and working and being in New York City was a total dream come true. But soon after I started to climb those stairs of my career, I realized that the industry that I chose, or the industry that chose me, was not composed of many other people who looked like me. As a result, I started to feel that I couldn't be my true self. The TV shows and the movies that I watched or the music that I listened to were not being talked about around the office. I found myself adjusting the things that I watched or the things that I read just so that I too could be part of the conversations at the office. Now picture this. You enter a party or you enter a room where there's absolutely no one who you know. Not a familiar face in sight. It's pretty uncomfortable, right? Naturally, one of the first things that you might do is look around, Try to find someone who reminds you of yourself, someone who looks relatable, someone who looks approachable, or you might stand around and eavesdrop on conversations until you can find one that you can insert yourself into or one that you can latch onto. But then imagine if none of those things happen while you're at this party. That was me. I was the one at this party or in this new big world of advertising who couldn't find anyone to connect with. No one that I could relate to or hold a familiar conversation with. And let me tell you, that was pretty tough. I felt just isolated. And I came to learn that this was and still is a very white male dominated industry. To borrow a few points from Dr. Christopher Bolton, who is Associate Professor of Communications at the University of Tampa, there are three things that continue to contribute to this ongoing problem. Number one, white nepotism. This is when you bring in candidates at the intern level to ad agencies who have either a family or even a client connection, and they ultimately become considered must-hires. And in most cases, these must-hires are a well-kept but open secret at an organization. And these connections are often subject to an implicit don't ask, don't tell policy. Number two, hiring decisions oftentimes come down to who is the right fit for a particular role rather than objective skills and experiences. And then the colorblind white employers can't or choose not to see that they are consistently hiring people who look like them or those who come from a similar background because these are the people with whom they feel most comfortable. Number three, opportunity hoarding is when advertising employees refer their friends for open positions with the innocent hope of having a familiar office mate. But this also leads to a racially homogeneous workplace. And all of these factors put underrepresented applicants at a terrible disadvantage. How do you tell true and authentic stories for diverse audiences if the people creating the work are not diverse themselves? We need to take it upon ourselves as members, from leaders, from brands, from agencies, to seek out diverse talent, to broaden your creative departments, expand your collective ideas in an effort to create truly effective stories that will allow us to widen the screen and widen our view. Speaking of widen the screen, this was the title of a film that I produced with the team at Grey New York in partnership with Procter Gamble before my departure from Grey. Now, Widen the Screen came about to address the systemic biases and inequalities that exist in advertising and in media. Its purpose is to celebrate creativity and enable Black creators to share the full richness of the Black experience from both behind the camera and on the screen. Here's a look at Widen the Screen.
If you think you know what happens next, ask yourself why. These are the Black stories we've been shown. A narrow view that limits our understanding. But there's so much more to see. Of Black life. Let's widen the screen so we can widen our view.
And that was Widen the Screen. And for this film, our goal was to work with as many black creators as possible, especially because here in the United States film industry, if you look behind the scenes, only about 6% of writers, directors, and producers are black, according to a February 2022 study by Arizona State University. We're extremely proud to say that for this film, we were able to employ black creators from all disciplines, including our director, our DP, our set photographer, editor, colorist, music composer, and sound designer, audio mixer. And this is why, for me, it was such a pleasure to produce this film. This is a portion of our cast and crew. We had a cast of 26 people who were all black creators, with the exception of the store owner, as you just saw. And for our Atlanta, Georgia, union-based production crew of approximately 50 people, over 95% were black creators. And of that, 40% were women. And by the way, the voiceover for our film was two-time Oscar-winning actor Mahershala Ali. And sticking with the Oscar theme, we had the pleasure of working with Oscar-nominated filmmaker Kevin Wilson Jr., who directed Widen the Screen. And I asked him to share a few words.
Thank you, Rondell, for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be part of the conversation about black representation in Hollywood and advertising, and talk about my experiences as the director of Widen the Screen. So my job as its director was primarily to bring the crew together to see the project through to its completion creatively. And that meant bringing a director of photography on, a production designer, costume designer, and making sure those individuals were black, because our intention was to work with an all-black crew, and to work with Gray Agency and Procter Gamble to make sure that when people watched the project, that they felt the tension that we wanted them to feel in the beginning, and to form biases based on things they've seen in the past in films and in television, and then to feel relief once they saw our characters engaging in joyful moments with their families and friends. You know, who better to tell our stories than us? You know, film, television, advertising are incredibly powerful mediums. It has the power to shape culture and to create perceptions and points of view about communities. And it's really important that the people who are involved with the creation of projects that are going to go on these screens are part of the community, or at the very least are sensitive to the culture and sensitive to the communities that are being presented, because we get it. We get the nuance. We understand the specificities behind our movements, behind how we speak and interact with one another. And so it's important that we're in those rooms crafting those stories so that when we are presented on the screen, we're presented in an authentic way.
Thank you, Kevin. It was a pleasure to work with him as well. Now, a favorite quote of mine comes from Booker T. Washington, who was an American educator. And it goes like this: success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has had to overcome while trying to succeed. And I would imagine that all of us in here have had to overcome obstacles of some sort during our careers. I know I've certainly had to overcome a ton to rise to where I am today. For example, years ago, we were getting ready to cast for a commercial, and the client during pre-production mentioned that they wanted the lead woman for their commercial to be black. But they said pretty much verbatim, I preferred to have the talent be more Halle Berry, less Whoopi Goldberg. Right? So I'm like, okay, that bothered me a bit, because as black people, we come in or an array of shades and skin tones, hair textures and all, right? So I understood what she was saying, but it made me stop and think, why are some brands more comfortable with the Halle Berry type representing their brand? How has the media and the news and movies and TV shows shaped our perception of how we view people of different races and different ethnicities? How has it conditioned us to think that light-skinned may be more beautiful or more approachable or more sellable? Think about it. And so in this continued push for diversity, we're all going to have to realize and recognize that we all have some unconscious bias of some sort. And then once we realize and recognize that, we can then make more conscious decisions in order to gain success in the areas of equity and inclusion. And when I say we, I mean both brands and agencies. It has to come from the two sides. And for someone who has been on two sides, Candace Vernon is an agency producer turned director. I asked her to talk about that transition and the challenges that she's faced now as being a Black female director, and got her point of view on the roles that brands play when it comes to diversity.
Transition from an agency producer to a director was not easy. I came to LA from New York. I moved all the way across the country because I wanted to make sure that no one knew me here as an agency producer. And here I am, I was in my mid-30s, Black woman, had the nerve to want to start over and have a brand new career, directing comedy and celebrities. And as you know, directing comedy and it was really like a white man's job. And, I'm trying to push my foot in and really just kick the door down and scream, I'm here, I can do it too. And last thing, as a director now with brands, I'm trying to make a change with the way they advertise their products in terms of diversity. I think that some brands are. Some brands are definitely stepping up to the plate and putting that money even want this. I'm very happy and proud to direct Virginia King, Sarah Brown, she made it and we had brand ads, but I think that there's room for improvement. I think that there's room to have more diversity that's not celebrity. Women, I think that also a lot of brands are definitely, on the bandwagon when all was changing the Black Lives Matter, everyone was posting the Black squares, everyone, had their Black Lives Matter tags all over social media everywhere. But I think that as soon as the chairs died down, some of the protesters stopped, that brand love and those initiatives to push for diversity, also died down because perhaps it wasn't as important anymore if it wasn't, in the buzz and in the news. So I think that there's room for a lot more diversity in the brands across the board.
Thank you, Candace, for those words. And as she mentioned, yes, there is still more room for improvement that brands can be doing when it comes to diversity. And my pastor always says that the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. But that's an opportunity where we as brands and as agencies can challenge our clients on this topic and enforce them to continue to enforce diversity in their brand messaging. So the question we've been asking here is, are we really making progress in this push for diversity? Well, let me ask you all who are out there. Think about this. How many people here have been on set with a non-white director, photographer? And if so, how many times? How many people have been on set, say, with a woman director or a woman photographer? And again, how many times? Or have you even awarded a job to an underrepresented vendor, whether that be a production company, a post company, an audio company? Think about that. But me, what do I think? I think yes, there is some progress being made, albeit slow progress. But slow progress is better than no progress. We have to keep the momentum going that we're building. And it will take the individual efforts of us all to bring about a collective change. Whether that's being a mentor or a sponsor to someone who doesn't look like you or who doesn't come from where you come from. Or responding to that random LinkedIn message from someone looking for advice or asking for a chance. Or reviewing reels and books from underrepresented talent who you didn't consider before and awarding jobs to them. Look to cast people in your campaigns who you didn't consider casting before. Every small step that we take will have a huge impact on the life of an underrepresented creative. And we know that diversity matters to consumers. According to a study from Think with Google, which gives readers insights into behavioral and cultural trends based on Google data, 69% of Black consumers say that they are more likely to purchase from a brand whose advertising positively reflects their race and their ethnicity. And as the data shows, diversity and inclusion is ultimately a win-win for advertisers, brands, and their customers. Also, there are a bevy of resources now available that we can take advantage of to rid ourselves of the excuse that we don't know where to look to find diverse talent. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. I simply wanted to just share some information that's readily available and accessible to us all as we look to diversify our staff and our productions. Some you may know, some may be new to you. Feel free to take a screenshot so you can have these with you and add them to your Rolodex. AdColor, they champion diversity and inclusion in creative industries. The Alliance for Inclusive Multicultural Marketing. Bid Black, where you can go to find diverse talent to bid. The Can Diversity Collective. Change the Lens, where you can go to where you can pledge to boost diversity in film and advertising. The Commercial Directors Diversity Program. Free the Work. Hire Black female creatives, where you can find photographers, videographers, directors, creatives, crew, and more. MAPE, the Multicultural Advertising Intern Program, where you can go to find some new budding talent. The One School, which is a free online portfolio school for Black creatives, again, where you can go to find and search some new fresh talent. 600 and Rising is advocating for Black voices to advocate into an advance in areas of advertising and in PR. So in conclusion, we have to be very intentional about diversity. It will not just happen on its own or because we simply talk about it. We have to be about it and take action. We have to realize, again, that we all have these unconscious biases of some sort, myself included. But then once you accept that and become more aware that you have these biases, you can then make more conscious decisions in the areas of hiring or of casting or in vendor selection or who you refer for an open role, whether that be an internship or even a senior level role. And that is a challenge that I leave with each of you today. Who will be the next person that you decide to take a chance on? Once upon a time in 2003, Nancy Axthelm, who was my first boss and head of production at Grey New York, took a chance on me, a 21-year-old kid from the streets of North Philadelphia. But that one chance that she gave me has allowed me to build a successful career in this business and even qualified me and afforded me the opportunity to be here today. And it is my duty and all of our duty to bring people who look like me along on this journey. Once again, my name is Rondell Wescott, and I thank you for your time.
Great. Thanks so much, Rondell. That was amazing. Great job.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. So many great questions. We have a little bit of time now for Q&A, and if you don't mind, we're just going to bounce through some of these questions. Just for myself, right? So your advice, what can companies do to help their employees get more familiar, right, with different cultures and teach them kind of the benefits of having a more diverse or having a team with more diverse background?
I'd say I know for most companies have ERGs, which are employee resource groups. I think those are good starts. Like I know personally at Google, we have a ton of those for pretty much every ethnicity or for every group, men, women, trans, white, Black, Asian, all types of, so like getting involved and becoming allies as well. Like obviously you can join a group that speaks to you and whatever your affiliations may be, but also join up and sync up with other groups too and figure out how you become an ally for an LGBTQ group or for a trans group or for a disabilities group, so like looking beyond your own personal, your own personal affiliations and sync up with other groups and learn and just become more affiliated, more associated with other groups outside of your own.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, something you said that really resonated with me was that like if for example, someone in a company is looking to hire a new employee, a colleague, or even somebody that works on their team, they often sort of look to their own circle, right? What they're familiar with, what they're more comfortable with.
Yeah.
And look, a lot of times that's not necessarily a bias. That can also be just that you're under the pressure to deliver, produced content, and
Yeah.
you got to get stuff out the door, right? And so if somebody quits your team, you need to hire and replace that person quickly so that you can keep going, right?
Yeah.
But the knee jerk reaction to sort of, go to that place where you're more comfortable is absolutely so true, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can, we had some pretty good people come in on our DEI initiatives when I was at Showtime and whatnot. And we learned a lot on this exact topic, to take a beat, right, and think about a little bit more about what you really want and what will propel your team forward, and not just knee jerk, just go to your comfort zone,
Yeah.
but try to sort of like break out of that comfort zone, right?
Yeah, and also too, I understand. I mean, as being a producer, timing is always tight, right? We rarely have the benefit of time to step back, think about who you may want, how you can include diverse teams, and then take the time to seek out those talent. Because it is easier to go to the A list of directors who people you've worked with before, or they can deliver, right? And you don't have time to get a treatment and talk to somebody new and believe that they're going to do a good job because you want to look good as well in the end, right? So the timing pressures that we're under in production sometimes don't allow us to take that beat, step back, and figure out how we can, diversify our pool, whether it be internal at an agency, the production vendor, the director, whoever it may be, right? So, but I mean, it's like, I can't answer the question about timing, but when there is timing on the production, and it's hardly ever. I would say one thing you can do is be more familiar ahead of time with some of these more diverse vendors, right? Like if there is downtime between productions, you could be doing your own production research, creating a list of diverse talent, of diverse directors and photographers and editors and music composers, right? Building up your list, getting reels with it, so that when the time comes, you can say, hey, look, I got this list of some great women directors over here, or for whatever it may be. Like, build up, take the time when you can, familiarize yourself, be a student of the industry always, going outside of the typical people who you typically would work with, and build that list so that when you have it and there is a time crunch, you already have a list ready to pull from, and don't have to then start the research then at that first time when you're in that time crunch.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Be prepared. Know who's out there.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like, to your point, it's not just diversity in skin color and other things. It's diversity in thinking even, right?
Yeah.
Like, you want a team that has a very different viewpoint about projects and how to work, so that you can have sort of counterpoint on anything that you're up against. So
Yeah.
often companies that, a lot of companies are paying attention to DEI now, right? It's a sort of a little bit of a buzzword, and it feels sometimes like people are just kind of checking the box, right?
Mm.
Um, so, when you're looking for hiring diverse candidates in big companies, a lot of times that happens at the sort of lower levels, right? Where you're bringing in kind of coordinator level, production assistant level people. And I think that's great, right? Because you're giving people the chance, the opportunity to sort of get into an industry. You're sort of paying it forward in that way. But do you see that as as more of a problem than a solution? Because you're not necessarily seeing people being brought in at a high level in a company in senior roles?
Mm. Yeah, definitely starting at it's not easier, but there's probably more opportunities to bring them in at an entry level role right now, from recruiting from colleges or from some of these programs, as I mentioned, like Ad Color or MAPE, right? There are more organizations now that are trying to make sure that diverse talent has entry level roles into a company. But to the question of more senior roles, I do think, obviously, if we don't introduce them at the intern level, we won't have them at the senior level either, right?
Right.
But I think that the pool is more limited the higher you go. Like, you don't have as many people of diversity, and that, again, that's men versus women and different ethnicities. The higher up you go, sometimes there tends to be less diverse because there's less options to pull from. They haven't been trained up in the business or the industry to know how to get to a leadership position. So I
Right.
think you just have a much smaller pool, the higher you go. So that's why it's so important for an intern level or assistant producer or entry level role, to making sure that, agencies and companies and recruiters are, being more intentional about trying to pull people from these different organizations and introducing them to the business. It's all about exposure, right? I know for me, I grew up in Philadelphia. Like advertising and production was never a career that was people did and knew much about, right? You knew about the lawyers and the doctors and the things that are like typical, right? But like producing, making commercials were nobody did it. So I fell into it because I was at college about to graduate, looking at our career center, and I was like, hey, I need to find a job. Going through the career book. Oh, an ad agency. What is that? I don't know, but I'm gonna apply because I need a job. So I kind of fell into it, again, because I
Yeah.
wasn't exposed to it much. But I think so exposure is so key and so important to introduce people to it at an earlier stage and earlier time in life so that they can enter the industry and we can help them grow to become more senior ultimately in their career.
Yeah, that's so true. You don't even know these things exist as kids.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't know.
yeah, I didn't either. Question from the audience: what first steps can I, as a creative production manager, take to make progress on this topic? So, as an individual, right, working on a team, perhaps part of a team, maybe in a big company, maybe in a small production company, but what can an individual do to sort of make progress on this topic?
Yeah, I think some of the resources that I mentioned, and I mentioned that was not an exhaustive list, but a lot of those places have pools of talent that you can pull from, like MAPE, for example, which is the Multicultural Intern Advertising Program. So at the advertising intern program, things like that, or even ad color. Every year they have as part of they do a yearly award show, and as part of like it's like a week of events, they have this thing called like ad color futures, right, where they like identify up and coming, creative people in the ad business who are not well known, but they have great books, great portfolios. They've done great things in colleges, right? So looking at ad color and seeing who they're nominating and recommending as like ad color futures. But just I say look up these organizations and become allies for them. Like they can always tell you they're always going to be looking to get their talent placed. So, or even colleges, right? Like colleges that have good television, film, advertising, media programs. That's also a good ground. Connecting with the schools, the career centers at the schools. Again, I found my job at Gray, my first job through my school's career center because somebody from Gray had solicited their listing to my college and I saw it and applied. So getting involved that way, getting your company, your name out, doing presentations at colleges. Now you can do things virtually, if not in person. So I think those are just a couple of ways, at least to like, link up with the organizations. You can get on their listservs, get on their mailing lists, so you can see what they're talking about, what they're doing, who they're promoting. Oftentimes they do highlight new talent. Hey, this is a new student, let's say, Jim Bob from this university. He was a star journalist student. He has a great reel. Give him a shot. So like they often highlight people. So those are ways I think that getting involved with the organizations and seeing what they're talking about, what they're promoting, who they're promoting, and then figure out how you can sync up with them and become an ally.
Yeah, those are great points. I also had a lot of success in my career, just letting people shadow professionals, right? Like bringing in that young kid or that person
Yeah.
that's trying to break into the industry as an editor or as a producer, whatever it is, and have them just tag along for the day and open up their eyes to what's out there and what's possible. And then they can start forming a network and make relationships and kind of take it from there. But just giving them that opportunity to just see it in action, I think is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Shadow.
Great.
Good. Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about this all day. There's so much good material here. Thank you so much, Rondell. It was great. Thanks to the audience for the great questions, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, everybody.